Boulder, Colorado, 5:59 in the morning, Mountain Standard Time, December 26, 1996. Officer Rick French of the Boulder Police Department pulls up to a 3-story Tudor-style home at 755 15th Street. He has never been inside it before. A woman has called 911. She has told the dispatcher that her 6-year-old daughter is missing and that a ransom note was left on the back staircase of the home. Inside, Officer French reads the note. It is 2.5 pages long, handwritten, and it demands $118,000, an amount almost exactly matching the Christmas bonus the father of the missing child has received from his company earlier that month. Officer French takes the information. He begins to conduct a preliminary search of the home. In the basement, he walks through a narrow corridor. He comes to a small door at the end of it. The door is secured with a wooden latch. He pauses in front of it. He does not open it. He turns around and walks back upstairs. Behind that door, in the darkened room beyond, 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey was already dead. This is not the story of who killed her. That story has been told, theorized, re-theorized, litigated in the court of public opinion, and reopened for 30 years. Every mainstream documentary made about JonBenét Ramsey has chased the same question. Who? And every one of them has reached the same dead end. This is the story of the door. It is the story of the choices made by the adults sent to protect the evidence of what happened in that basement. It is the story of the 7 hours that followed the moment Officer Rick French walked away from a wooden latch. And it is the story of something almost no one knows. The killer left DNA. It is real. It has been sitting in a Colorado Bureau of Investigation evidence locker since the month JonBenét died. As of 2026, 30 years later, it still cannot be read. 5:52 in the morning. Patsy Ramsey places the call to 911. She has come downstairs to make coffee. On the back staircase, she has found 3 sheets of white paper covered in dark ink. She reads them. She runs to her daughter's bedroom. The bed is empty. Within the hour, a small group of officers arrives. They secure no perimeter. They seal no rooms. Patsy Ramsey makes phone calls. Family friends begin to arrive. A pastor arrives. 2 victims advocates arrive. They enter the home. They are not turned away. They move through the rooms. Someone cleans the kitchen. Surfaces are wiped. A dish is washed. The house where a ransom note has just been found is being kept tidy. Detective Linda Arndt arrives at approximately 8 o'clock in the morning. She is expecting a kidnapping. She is expecting the phone to ring. The note has promised a call between 8 and 10. She sits with the family and waits. The call does not come. By noon, the situation has changed. This is no longer a kidnapping. Something else has happened, and no one inside the house knows what it is. At approximately 1 in the afternoon, more than 7 hours after the original 911 call, Detective Arndt asks John Ramsey and his friend Fleet White to search the house for anything unusual. They begin in the basement. John Ramsey walks to the end of the corridor. He reaches the small door with the wooden latch. He opens it. He finds his daughter. He removes the duct tape from her mouth. He picks her up. He carries her body upstairs. He places her on the floor near the Christmas tree. It is, at this moment, 1 o'clock in the afternoon on December 26, 1996, that the JonBenét Ramsey case, as an investigation, ceases to exist. The crime scene is destroyed. The body has been moved. Fibers have been transferred. Fingerprints have been smeared. Any trace evidence on her clothing has been compromised by the hands of the man who found her. The hands that touched her. The hands that lifted her. Whatever the killer left behind in that basement room is now mixed with the presence of everyone who has walked through that house since 5:52 that morning. The mistake had been made before anyone knew a mistake was possible. It would be 30 years before anyone measured how much the door had cost. The theory came together fast. The ransom note had been written on paper from a pad inside the Ramsey home. The demanded amount, $118,000, matched almost to the dollar John Ramsey's recent Christmas bonus from Access Graphics, the technology company he ran. The handwriting, according to preliminary analysis, could not be ruled out as belonging to Patsy Ramsey. There were no signs of forced entry. The family dog had not barked. The body had been found inside the house. Boulder police focused on John and Patsy Ramsey within days. Patsy submitted handwriting samples. The results were inconclusive. The family retained attorneys. They declined further formal police interviews. They would not sit for full recorded interrogations until May of 1997, 5 months after their daughter's death. The public read the silence as guilt. In 1999, a Boulder grand jury heard 13 months of testimony. The panel voted to indict Jon and Patsy Ramsey on 2 counts: child abuse resulting in death and accessory to first-degree murder. Then District Attorney Alex Hunter declined to sign the indictment. He said the evidence did not support a conviction. The vote itself remained secret. The public would not learn that a grand jury had voted to indict the Ramseys until 2013, 14 years later. The investigation was, by this point, already in collapse. The Boulder Police Department had committed to a theory. It was the parents. It had always been the parents. Every new piece of evidence was filtered through that conclusion. In the late 1990s, the Boulder District Attorney's Office began looking for outside help. They wanted a second set of eyes, a veteran homicide detective who could come in, review the case file, and tell them what they were missing. They found a 71-year-old retired detective in Colorado Springs. His name was Lou Smit. He had come out of retirement specifically to take the case. What he was about to discover would lead him to write a resignation letter within 18 months and to spend the last 12 years of his life trying to undo what he had read. Lou Smit was, by the time the Boulder DA's office called him, already considered one of the most accomplished cold case detectives in Colorado. He had spent 4 decades solving homicides. He was known for patience. He was known for never assuming. He was known for refusing to let a theory close a case. He agreed to come work the JonBenét Ramsey investigation in the spring of 1997. He was 71 years old. His instruction from the district attorney was simple: read everything and then decide. He read everything. What he found in the case file was a set of details he could not reconcile with the theory that the killer was one of JonBenét's parents. There was a broken window in the basement. There were small, unexplained wounds on her body. 2 matching marks that he came to believe had been made by a stun gun. He ran the marks past a Taser International engineer. The engineer confirmed the spacing was consistent with a commercially available model. Neither Jon nor Patsy Ramsey had ever been known to own one. He studied the ransom note for months. He studied the house. He studied the entry points. He began to assemble a list of possible intruders, men who had been in or near the Ramsey home in the months before the murder, men who had worked construction, men who had made deliveries, men who had been photographed near the family. The list grew. By the end of his career, it would number approximately 700 names. In September of 1998, Lou Smit resigned from the case. He wrote a letter to District Attorney Alex Hunter. In it, he said he believed an intruder had killed JonBenét Ramsey. He said the Boulder Police Department had committed to a theory, the parents, and would not investigate anything else. He used a phrase that would follow him for the rest of his life: scenario lock. He left the DA's office. He went home. He did not stop. Patsy Ramsey was diagnosed with ovarian cancer for the first time in 1993, 3 years before her daughter was killed. She went into remission. In the years after the murder, the cancer returned. She lived under the weight of public suspicion throughout the entire span of her illness. Strangers wrote letters accusing her of the murder. Television panels convened to debate whether she had written the ransom note. Magazine covers carried her face next to her dead daughters. She died on June 24, 2006. She was 49 years old. She was buried next to JonBenét in a cemetery in Marietta, Georgia. At the time of her death, Lou Smit was still investigating. Quietly. On his own time. He was 80 years old. 2 years after Patsy was buried, on July 9, 2008, Boulder District Attorney Mary Lacey held a press conference. Touch DNA analysis, a technique that had not existed when the case file was opened, had been run on the waistband of the long johns JonBenét had been wearing when her body was found. The results had come back clean. The DNA did not belong to Jon Ramsey. It did not belong to Patsy Ramsey. It did not belong to their surviving son, Burke. It belonged to an unknown male. Mary Lacey formally exonerated the Ramsey family. She wrote a letter of apology to Jon Ramsey and mailed it to their home. The letter arrived at a house where Patsy Ramsey no longer lived. She had been dead for 2 years. She had died publicly accused of killing her own daughter. The apology was addressed to her husband. For most of the public, the story ends here. DNA exoneration. Family cleared. Case proceeds toward resolution. Technology advances. Killer identified. Justice eventually delivered. That is not what has happened. The DNA that exonerated the Ramsey family in 2008 was deposited on JonBenét's clothing by an unknown male at or near the time of her death. It is real. It is in a secure evidence locker at the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. It has been there since December of 1996. Every annual Boulder police update since has promised renewed testing. Every annual update has implied that the answer may be close. The answer is not close. And the reason it is not close is a technical fact about the evidence itself that has almost never been stated plainly in public. The DNA on JonBenét's clothing is not a clean sample of her killer's genetic material. It is a mixture. Roughly 50% of the sample belongs to her. Roughly 50% belongs to him. Two contributors, nearly equal. Modern forensic sequencing, the technology that has solved other cold cases, identified other killers, broken the Golden State Killer case, cannot reliably separate a 50-50 mixture into its two underlying profiles. It is a documented technical limitation. The software looks at the genetic material and sees both people at once. Overlaid, it cannot pull them apart. In October of 2025, former Denver District Attorney Mitch Morrissey, the prosecutor who had originally authorized the testing that built the profile now sitting in the evidence locker, sat for an interview with CBS Colorado. He was asked whether the science had finally caught up to the case. He said no. He said, quote, "It's a 50-50 mixture. We are not at a stage with sequencing to be able to do a 50-50 mixture." End quote. That single sentence is the hinge on which this entire case now turns. When the Boulder Police Department announces each December that it has submitted new evidence for DNA retesting, what is happening in the laboratory is not a breakthrough. What is happening is that forensic scientists are running the same 50-50 mixture through a new generation of sequencers, hoping the new machine will be sensitive enough to see two contributors where the old machine saw one blur. Each year, the machine is a little more sensitive. Each year, it is not yet sensitive enough. The killer is in the vial. The technology is not yet in the laboratory. Because the sample cannot be separated into clean profiles, the technique everyone has been hoping would solve the case. Investigative genetic genealogy, the method that identified the Golden State Killer, cannot yet be deployed. Genetic genealogy requires a clean profile to upload to a consumer database. A 50-50 mixture produces only noise. Every year since 2008, the same small glass vial in a secure locker in Colorado has been tested again. Every year, the result is the same. December of 2025, Boulder Police Chief Stephen Redfern issues the department's annual statement. It confirms that the department has, in the past year, conducted several new interviews, re-interviewed individuals based on tips, and submitted additional items of evidence to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. Some of those items, according to the statement, had never been tested before. Forensic laboratories run the new submissions alongside the existing sample. Completion of the comparisons is expected by March of 2026, within weeks of the 30th anniversary of JonBenét Ramsey's death. March of 2026 arrives. No announcement is made. The window passes. As of April of 2026, there has been no public resolution of the current round of testing. Boulder police continue to describe the investigation as active and ongoing. No new suspect has been named. No arrest has been made. The Ramsey family has been informed that testing is underway, but not of any scientific details. John Ramsey is 83 years old. He lives with JonBenét's photograph on the lock screen of his phone. He has met with 5 separate Boulder police chiefs since his daughter's death. He met with OFI Chief Redfern in the fall of 2025. He has publicly stated that he believes the eventual answer will come through investigative genetic genealogy, the same technique that identified the Golden State Killer. He is not wrong about the promise of that technique. He has not been told publicly why it cannot yet be deployed in his daughter's case. A 50-50 mixture cannot yet produce the clean genetic profile that genetic genealogy requires. The barrier is not political. It is not financial. It is not institutional. It is a problem of physics, of chemistry, of the resolution of a machine that has not yet been built. Lou Smit has been dead for 16 years. Lou Smit was diagnosed with cancer in 2009. He continued to work the JonBenét Ramsey case until he was physically unable to sit at his desk. When he could no longer travel, his daughter drove him. When he could no longer drive, she drove the files to him. He kept them in his home. He died on August 11, 2010. He was 84 years old. In the years since his death, his family has continued his work. His daughter, Cindy Mara, has maintained the file. She has spoken publicly about the 700 persons of interest her father compiled. She has pushed for the case to be formally reopened under updated protocols. In 2023, the Boulder Police Department agreed to submit the case to the Colorado Cold Case Review Team, an act that, according to the Ramsey family and the filmmakers behind the 2024 Netflix docuseries, required a public campaign to the governor's office in order to happen. Smit never identified the killer. He never said, in any interview or in any document that survives him, that he knew. What he said, consistently, from September of 1998 until the final weeks of his life, was that the case was solvable, that an intruder had killed JonBenét Ramsey, that the Boulder Police Department had, by scenario lock, given that intruder 30 years of cover. In a house in Boulder, on a morning in 1996, an officer named Rick French paused in front of a door and walked away. He had been on the scene for less than an hour. He did not know what the door concealed. In Colorado Springs, a year later, a 71-year-old detective named Lou Smit was handed the file of what had happened because of that door. He read it. He did not turn around. The two men never met. Lou Smit died in August of 2010. The DNA in the evidence locker has not yet been read. If you enjoy dark mysteries and forbidden history, subscribe to the Black Archive.